Hello, and welcome to the About Healing podcast, a show created for those on or awakening into their spiritual journeys, and who are ready, wanting, and learning how to heal themselves. I am your host, About Healing medium and certified spiritual healer, Cherie Buckman. It is my purpose to guide others to the path of self-healing and to inspire those on their spiritual journeys in finding their truths. Join me as I share my experience and unfiltered perspective in healing, as well as the incredible wisdom of the loving energy that guides us. Let's begin. Welcome back, beautiful souls, to another episode of About Healing podcast. Again, I am Cherie, About Healing medium. We're here doing what I do best, and that is talking about healing in general. I'm really excited for this episode and everything that we have going on this season. And before we get into that and I introduce our guest today and what we'll be talking about, I want to go ahead and continue with our Sacred Self-Care Oracle deck. I drew a card for this week with the intention of wanting to draw the one that is the message that those who are listening, this is what they need to hear in their self-care journey. And the card that I drew this week is spend time with animals. I don't know. I've been there recently, just really attaching to my dogs recently. So I'm going to read from the book here and describe what this is. The association between animals and spirit guidance has a long history. Animals are known for their ability to share wisdom, send us messages, and be our guardians. If you have pets, spend time with them and give them lots of extra affection. Allow their unconditional love to infuse into your being. If you don't have pets, get creative about how you can spend time with animals. Visit a friend or family member who has pets. Go outside to observe cute little creatures in their natural environment. Watch funny cat videos. Volunteer at a local shelter. Foster an animal, pet sit for a friend, or call in an animal guardian during your next meditation. Keep an eye out for animals showing up in daily life, such as when you spot a bird, snake, frog, dragonfly, or spider. Take a moment to go within first and find out what that animal means to you or under what circumstances you have encountered it before. Then look up the meaning of the animal in ancient wisdom teachings for additional guidance on what its appearance in your life may signify. Trust your intuition when decoding the message this creature holds for you. Oh, that was a cute one. So hopefully that means something to you and you can find a little bit of relaxing and that guidance in there. So let's get into this week's episode and our topic. As we are beginning our whole self-wellness journey, I wanted to begin this by bringing on a friend and someone who is also part of my tribe. And it is astrologer Tracey Couto. So let me explain a little bit about her as I bring her on. Tracey Couto is a self-taught astrologer of 25 years. She comes from a psychic and universal, energetic family line. So she grew up around it, about questioning the bigger picture or different perspectives and looking for guidance. And at 20, she had her first astrology reading. Now, it was actually a few years later when she picked up a magazine in line at a store. It was about zodiac signs. This was the moment when everything and her purpose aligned. So, welcome, Tracey. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Cherie, for having me. I am so honored.
Oh my goodness, I love this. So as we were talking before, which I think is really interesting that I wanted to bring up for here for a second is, you got into astrology and you're self-taught in this also. But you started this before the internet charts.
Yes, this was about a year before everybody started getting on the internet. So everything was manual by books. Everything was, all calculations done by hand. And it was through one of those book things that you would, back way back in the day, they had like, you could get these books for a penny. So I said, well, why not? I saw one that said how to cast your own astrology chart. And it was right after I was at the grocery store and had that little booklet that you mentioned.
Uh-huh.
And it was like all around the same month. It was all April of 1998. Like everything was just happening like all at once, happening all at once. And so, yeah, that's how I started out. And then right from there, it just took off. And then a year later, the internet came about, and one of the books had a link, one of the Linda Goodman books that I had picked up along the journey. And that was about a year after. It was summer of 99. And there was a link to go to lindagoodman.net. I'll never forget. And when I went on there, it was like a whole new world. Everybody that ever loved Linda Goodman, she was an astrologer from the 70s, and anyone that ever loved her was there. And it was just so surreal to be surrounded by so many like-minded people. Like I went from 0 to 100. I mean, first I was all alone, and then boom, I had hundreds of people, and it was just so great. And that's how I really got into astrology, and I started to get really, good at it. Yeah, so that's how it started.
You are very good at it. So for me, I've had a few readings by Tracy. And honestly, before Tracy, I mean, mine were I've never had an official reading or like a chart reading. Mine were all like the ones we get online. It's Aquarius, what's in line for you this month or this year? So it's the very general things that those are the only things I've had. So I will say though, but you blew my mind away every time you do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so like personality and all the things going on. It is crazy on what these readings can tell you about yourself.
It's very amazing. I mean, every planet basically tells you something. Each planet stands for something. Like Mercury is the messenger, he's the communicator, he's actually like your brain. Basically, everything your brain will do, talking, reading, all that stuff. And then Venus is love and money, and she's like the relationship person, the goddess of relationships. So when you want to look at relationship stuff, you want to go to Venus. And Mars is all about your action, sexual energy. So every planet basically has like a task for you, a way to guide you. So it's amazing. I love it.
That is so interesting. So, and a lot of this, I'm so interested, but it also blows my mind because as you're even talking about that, I'm trying to absorb and understand it. And I think it's fascinating that you are self taught in this. And I say that because, I also self-taught myself and how to do like the mediumship things. And it was about reading and I was reading books. That's what I did. I read books, I read books, I practiced, I read books, I read books, and I practiced. And I know like you have that very similar story. That's how you went. And then you found your other people that were just as interested in it. So can you do something for me? Can you really describe what astrology is? Like what is it about?
Astrology, basically, it's a snapshot of the sky at the moment you were born. Everybody, when you take your first breath, the stars are all in a certain spot. The sun is where it's going to be. All the planets are in a certain spot. And when you're born, it's like a snapshot of the sky. And all that energy, every planet has its own energy, as I started to describe already, but each of the planets has one. I mean, I could go through the whole thing, but it's all Googleable stuff. So, I mean, you could Google each of the planets and find out what they all mean. But basically, it's like all that energy is like a part of you, just like your DNA is a part of you. And that map is yours. Nobody else on this earth, past, present, or future, nobody is ever going to have that exact lineup of planets that you have. So it's personal to you. And I sometimes like to call it your rap sheet because a lot of times, because I believe in reincarnation, so I believe that your soul has journeyed here many times and gone through many lifetimes. So in other lifetimes, you may have, had some weaknesses or things that you need to still work on. And if you haven't completed it and if you haven't worked on it, it's going to show up in your chart. You're going to see it. It's going to be like a square or an opposition type of aspect. Like the planets will be like square to each other or in opposition. And it'll show you like, oh, yeah, this is where you still have some work to do. But it also shows your strengths too. It'll show things that you've mastered and gifts that you've, worked on and earned because you've done all these things and you've learned all these things. Like for instance, in my chart, I have the sun, and it's an aspect to Neptune, and it's an aspect to Pluto, and all those outer planets, like from Uranus and Neptune and Pluto, those are all like this really super spiritual planets. So I have that in my chart, and so do you, Cherie. That's why I know we're like soul sisters, because you have a lot of those same aspects too. But that'll kind of show you, oh wow, so I do have strengths in psychic work, or I do have strengths in astrology, because I have a Mercury Uranus conjunction. So that means my brain, my learning, and things like Uranus based things like technology, astrology, all that super, computer whiz stuff, that stuff comes easy to me because I must have learned it in a past life. That's why things come easy to you, because you have learned it in a past life. But it is definitely, your astrology chart is definitely the map for you. And when you're lost and you're feeling like, oh, I don't know if I should go this way or that way, you can look at your chart and the transits, which basically, after the snapshot of the moment that you're born, the snapshot that's taken, the planets continue to move after that. And they will come back in contact with the planets in your chart. And every now and then, when that happens, it's called a transit. When that certain planet comes back and talks to another planet in your chart, basically connects again, it's got something to tell you. And it'll like help you to realize and say, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be working on right now. And this is how I can be working on it. It's definitely a map to help you. And it shows you your purpose too. There's things about your purpose in there also, like what you're here to do in this lifetime. And it's a really great gift to have this astrology chart at your disposal. I love that.
It's so fascinating, especially what you just said, and it's hitting me like a ton of bricks, and I've heard you talk about this before, and we've had these conversations. But again, as you talk about this is we're talking about the astrology chart, correct? Specifically, the astrology your chart. So this is one that's
Yes.
individualized to every person. So what's interesting, and as you were talking about the past lives and how, it can show the pieces and the alignment of things that you've done before that you are really strong, that you bring out really strong in this lifetime with this personality, right? So what I find is beautiful and finding an alignment like with that and what you're doing and this piece, but also so when I am in a session with a client, when I go into the pre-life planning portion where we go into that moment, I am taken back into a pre-life planning session as our souls before we come into this world. I believe I've described it on this show before, but I'm going to go into it quickly and give a small description because when I go into the space, I'm always guided to see we're in this one room, and to me, it's almost like almost half classroom because there's this giant board on the wall. It's like a giant whiteboard or chalkboard, right? But and as we're standing there, like, with our main guide and, it's like the council is sitting in the background, and then you have your soul team. I always see them behind, like, almost a two-way mirror or this glass on the other side, and everyone's kinda watching and, like, "What are you doing? What are you creating for this lifetime?" And what's interesting is that giant chalkboard or that whiteboard there, and the way I've always said it, it's of a technology that I couldn't even truly comprehend or explain, right? It is up there and it's in symbols and it's in light and it looks like this big, almost like a timeline, but it's not that. And it's interesting because as you talk about it in this astrology chart, but that's what I just know that's a part of what it is. Like it's creating this giant like astrological map, sort of speak, in the background. And it's like it's creating as we're creating our lifetime and we're creating this new personality we're coming in as we're creating like these lessons that we need to learn and we're taking out from the previous lifetimes that we've done before. And we're trying to heal these karmic lessons or these, relationships we've had with people in the past, and we're bringing them into this. It is all creating it on this beautiful screen, which I also believe to be that chart, and I think it's fantastic that you bring that up. And I don't know, would you say, or does that feel a little bit of truth to you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because this is just one tool of many. So you have your way of seeing things,
Mhm.
and they all do connect. They all do connect. Astrology,
Yeah,
even tarot cards, has its own way to connect with your spirit guides. I mean, there's just so many different tools out there, but they're all similar and they all work together.
absolutely. I love this. So tell me more about what it means to understand our chart. Like, how does that help us in our self-healing? How would that help us in our daily life?
Okay, so like say for instance, you want to start a new job, right? And like you've been in your job for years and years and years, but you're like, you know what? I feel like I need a change, but I'm not sure if I can make this change right now because, I have bills, you have responsibilities, you don't like, you get scared, right? And a lot of times you feel the things in your chart, like you feel like the next movement that you have to make. You feel like, okay, I know this change has to be made. Because in essence, really, the whole journey is all about evolving and being better than you were. You don't want to stay stuck. So sometimes people get stuck and then they realize, oh, I feel like I'm so stuck. I feel like I need to break out of this rut, but I'm scared, right? So you look at your chart and then you might see something like, oh, I have Pluto in the second house. Now, Pluto is one of those slow moving planets, and he's really the one that is all about evolution. He'll like, get you out of the ruts. He'll take away things that no longer serve you and then are no longer useful to you. And he will put you where you need to be, kind of. And he'll give you that feeling like, okay, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to be strong and I'm going to make this change, because really it's all about changing and evolving. So if you see Pluto like in your second house, now your second house is your income. It's money that you earn. So if you see that, you're going to rest assured, yeah, it is time. It's time for me to break out of the patterns that I've been in before because they're no longer serving me. I need to break out. Like, for instance, for me, I was always a bookkeeper. I still kind of am, but I've always wanted to do this psychic work. So there was a time in my life where I did have Pluto in my second house. And because Pluto is one of those slower moving planets, he was in my second house for like a good 20 years. So it was a slow evolution. And there was times where I did do astrology work for, income, extra income. And I did make that change. And I'm still doing it. I'm still growing and I'm still making the transition. But that's what it is. It's a slow transition. You don't have to feel rushed. Now, if you had some other planet in there like Mars, he's more faster acting. That's going to be the planet that's going to be like, okay, now is the time to put out your resumes. Now is the time to go back to school and learn skills that will enable you to do the work that you want to, like a whole complete change. Like, for instance, bookkeeping to astrology, that is total change. Some people might just make small changes and say, all right, instead of, just doing bookkeeping, maybe I'll be a CPA, like they're still in the same field, but they're just going up the ladder. That would be more of a Saturn thing. If you see Saturn there, Saturn is like about 2.5 years in each house. But if you see something like Pluto, then the change can be slower and more. I mean, it'll be more of a drastic change, but you have more time to make the change. And then you feel more at ease and you're like, okay, now I'm taking better care of myself because now I'm more in line with what I'm supposed to be doing on this earth. And then you feel happier and then you're not as miserable, because if you're in a job that makes you miserable, then you're going to be a miserable person and you're not going to help other people. You're going to be like, I don't even want to be next to that person. I just want to stay in my own little world. But when you're in line with what you're supposed to be doing, the joy and the happiness is there. And then it makes you a happier person. And then you feel like helping other people and you feel like showing that joy to others. And it's contagious. And then when you're around people, when you're in that joyful moment, other people start getting more joyful too. And then they start realizing, hey, I want to be in that space too. What can I do? And then they look at their chart and they realize, oh, I need to make this change. And a lot of times it's things that you already inside know. And basically everybody, even if you don't know your chart, you're kind of living it anyways, subconsciously, because all of that is in you. And you may not even realize you're making these changes or why you suddenly feel like you want to make these changes. But that's why, because it's all part of your map. Even if you're not aware of it, you're still living it. I've seen that as an astrologer all these years, that people, a lot of times they'll come to you because they feel this inside. And then when you tell them about it, it's the confirmation. It's like, oh, okay, good. I'm not going crazy. I am feeling that I need to make this change. And it's really because I'm supposed to be, in accordance with my evolution, which your astrology chart is the map for that evolution. So you can look at your chart at any time and see where the planets are and know, okay, I'm supposed to be working on this. And this is the rate of change I'm supposed to be doing, based on the planet that's involved.
No, oh my goodness. Yes, all of this. Like I have so many like thoughts and questions to go along with everything you just said. Because,
Oh,
you were
good.
talking about before or just a minute ago about how, certain planets when they enter, your certain houses and how they can slow things down or speed things up, like applying for a job. So I found that interesting in bringing that up. So this would also be the reason, or would also be important to understand your chart too, because sometimes I feel like some of us would keep trying and trying and trying to bring change, right? Like we're trying to control it. We need this change, but if we keep getting like shot down, things keep happening. And to understand our chart, if certain planets are aligned in a certain way, it's because we're not meant to be doing it yet, right? So that can bring that stop. You're getting these roadblocks and you're getting these stops because it's not part of your bigger plan or part of your chart yet. There is going to be, like you would say, there would be a transition at one point where it's supposed to open up. And that's going to be the time that, the universe, your chart and the universe will completely just amplify and support you in this change. I mean, is that correct? Like there are times and space where you're just uber supported and it can really go and skyrocket in certain places when you try this certain whatever it is you're trying to do, this change or going for something. And then there's other times if you try it when it's not part of that amplifying energy, then you're being like pushed down and pushed down and pushed down.
Exactly. Everything is divine timing. If you try and do things too soon, you're not ready, you're going to probably flub it. So you should, because there's probably other things you need to do first, and there's other matters that need to be tended to first. And the chart will basically tell you, because if you have a certain planet in a certain house, that's what you're supposed to be working on right now. Like right now, I'm wrapping up a Saturn in my fourth house, and the fourth house is family, it's home, it's all that. So when I started that transit about 3 years ago, because my fourth house is big, so Saturn was in there for 3 years instead of 2.5, because the houses are different sizes. So basically, I was setting up my new home with my new boyfriend that I just moved in with. We were setting up a new family and we got two new cats. And basically, my life now that I'm coming to the end of that transit is so different than when I started. When I started, I was still living in a little apartment. We were just dating. Since I've gone through this transit, we're now domestic partners. I mean, things were going on in the seventh house. That's the house of relationships. There were things going on in that house as well to tie in. I've had Uranus in that house, which is sudden changes.
Mhm.
So I've all of a sudden, when I swore that I would never have a relationship again after my last one ended, but here I was, I started a new relationship, a new family, and lived in a new house. And also it could be home-based businesses, and I have been kind of working on that too, trying to get the work at home kind of thing going on. My corporate job, I was working at home at the time, so I got to do more work at home. And now with this astrology, getting back into it, it's been, I've been trying to do that from home also. So see, the time was now. So that's
Yes.
why Saturn was in my fourth house, to kind of let me know this is the time to work on home things, things you want to do from home. Saturn is building, it's, taking things from scratch and building something brand new. But if I had tried to do that any other time, it probably wouldn't have worked out as well. It's because that was the time. And Saturn is kind of like the planet that is like the taskmaster. He's the one that's basically all about timing. He's the one that's like, okay, now it's time. He's like that school teacher that's always, trying to teach you things. This is the time to do this. This is the time to learn that. All about timing. Yes, divine timing.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest pieces I took from, like, my readings with you. So, I feel so much, and I know big things are coming, and for me, I'm always trying to create these big things, and sometimes I'm always asking, like, "Why isn't it happening?" And then my guides are always yelling at me, "Because you need to do this in stages. We need to build foundation." And then I believe you even it was part of my last reading you said too, I'm like, "Because this is a slow grow, Cherie. This is what your chart reads." And again, getting reminders all over the place. And I'm like, yeah, it's all part of my own lessons here of trying to propel myself so high so fast. And it's like, slow down, foundation, foundation, foundation.
Yes,
Right. So,
you have to build that firm foundation.
right. And so fascinating. And I love this so much. You prepared something for us today, and you wanted to telling us what's going on
It's
astrologically for us this winter, right? So you're breaking it down into seasons for us so we get more of a concentrated version of what's going on this year.
Yes. So the biggest thing that's happening this winter, and it's big because it involves Pluto, and Pluto is right now the slowest planet that we have because the further the planet is, the slower its orbit. So Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008, for 16 years, and now it's getting ready to go into Aquarius. Now, Pluto, the whole time Pluto's been in Capricorn, Capricorn is all about like pretty much authority and government, and Pluto is all about, pretty much death and destruction and endings. So anytime Pluto is in a sign, it's going to end things that have outworn its usefulness. So, like our government, I mean, I don't like to talk political stuff, but so I'm going to just kind of like say it, like, wrap it up in a small, compact little way. But basically, if you've seen the presidents that we've had from February of 2008, which was Obama, to now, you're probably going to notice a kind of like a decline because we've had Obama, then we had Trump, right? Then we had Biden. You kind of see like a breakdown in the government, but it's supposed to happen because I think sometimes what happens with people in power and authority, it goes to their head and they get power hungry and they take from the people like all our tax money, but they don't give back. So when COVID happened, as awful as that was, and sometimes Pluto will come in awful packages, but in the end, it was all good because how many people got that extra $600 a week during COVID? I mean, I wasn't the ones because I was one of the essential workers, but a lot of people out there got that extra $600. So all that money that was hoarded from us that should have been given to us all this time to help us was actually starting to be given to us now. Now, the last time Pluto was in Capricorn was when the American Revolution and the Declaration of Independence was being drawn up. So
Wow.
think about how, like, government, how it started, what their plans and intentions were for us to be free. It was all about freedom. Well, now Pluto is going to be going into Aquarius. I mean, it kind of dipped in last spring for a little while because that's how the planets go. They go forward, they go back, they go forward, they go back. But now it's going to be going into Aquarius, not for good, because it's going to
September to November. It's going to dip back into Capricorn again for a short little time. But pretty much you can kind of say it's pretty much here. And it's all about Aquarius. It's all about what the country was supposed to be about: freedom and freedom of speech, freedom of this, freedom of that. You know, how we broke away from England in the 1600s when we all came on the Mayflower way back then. That's what the plan was back then, was to be free, not to be tied to England or tied to government. But over the years, that's kind of what happened. Government got power hungry or whatnot. So we're going to be getting back to that freedom again. So when Pluto comes to Aquarius, you're going to see that the government is going to be all different. It's not going to be like it's been. It's going to be more like what our forefathers promised us and what they were trying to do for us. You're going to see all that freedom come back again. And the other thing that's kind of ongoing for this winter is a sextile between Jupiter and Saturn. And Jupiter is all about opportunities and growth. And it's in Taurus right now, which is all about pretty much our income, our money, things that we buy with our money. So there's been a big growth spurt there. But with Saturn being in the picture, it's going to slow that growth down. And Jupiter is actually going to help Saturn because Saturn wants to go a little more slower than Jupiter wants. So you're going to have more of a balanced growth. So the growth is going to happen in things like for us because Saturn is in Pisces, and Pisces is all about the spiritual stuff. It's all about the spiritual aspects of life. So people like us who are into the spiritual lines of work, and Pisces is also about artistic lines of work as well. So like if you're into music, if you're into artwork, those kind of businesses will also flourish. And people who want to make money with that, this is the time to get those projects started and get those those goals and dreams started, because you have Jupiter increasing your finances and giving you opportunities to do that. And then you have Saturn that's helping you build those kind of businesses that are more of the artistic and spiritual type businesses. And you have that foundation work that's going to help. You can have that energy there to help you. So this will be a good winter for me, because this is what I'm doing, right? This is a good winter for me to get these businesses, to get this business started again. Because I was doing this like 10 years ago, and then I had to stop because the boyfriend I was with, it's a long story I won't get into.
Life
But
happened.
I had to stop back then and just focus on corporate. But now with this energy that's, helping us, I'm definitely gonna do it. I'm definitely gonna get my everything back in line again, and I'm gonna start doing this again.
Oh, I love it. And hey, that means everybody too. Buy your tickets to the About Healing retreat. That's coming up in April. So just throwing it out there with our awesome little astrology reading and that. And so, which also brings me into how to contact Tracy. This is amazing. So Tracy, if you're curious about Tracy and your your chart readings and would like one, reach out to her. You can reach her by email at guidinglightastrology0411 and you can find her on Facebook. She has her own page on there. It's called Guiding Light Astrology. We will absolutely put these in the notes for the podcast. So you can find it in there and you can find her links. Go and talk to her. I'm going to tell you, get a reading. It is amazing. And it is I reach out to her often. Like I said, she's part of my tribe. And sometimes we need one another. We need to make sense of certain situations. And I'm going to tell you, knowing these pieces have absolutely helped. And this is the reason I had her on. I had Tracy on, number one, astrology. Who doesn't love astrology? I know I geek out over it. And number two, it's understanding, who you are, where you come from, and the whys and hows. That's where it's written. And when we understand that more, we can start to kind of step back and take a different perspective about ourselves and what we're going through. And we can allow ourselves to heal. We can allow ourselves to take that other perspective is powerful. And that sometimes, and we have these hardships or we have those no's and we have those blocks coming in, it's because it's not the time and we're not meant to go through it yet. Or maybe we're supposed to take that time and do more self reflection and more of that internal healing before the new stars or new planets align that gives us that momentum and that push and that universal clearance to make those changes and go into, the next version of ourselves or the next chapter we're supposed to be going into. But remember, everything that we're going through, and I highly believe it, I believe that everything we're going through is meant to be. Because whether it is hard and difficult and you're being triggered or there's trauma, there's lessons in it. These are the reminders that have come to us from our past lives that are telling us, hey, we haven't healed that yet. Let's do something about that in a healthy way. How can we how can we go inside and not just cover it up and cement it into a ball inside of ourselves? Because we talked about that in last season in our chakra series of how that can really hurt us and it creates those physical ailments and it creates this cascade of issues. No, let's go in it and find it. Let's do the work. And most of all, and as I end every episode, and I mean this full heartedly, the way we begin to heal this planet and raise this collective consciousness, it starts with our own selves and it starts with being kind to ourselves. So, to all of you beautiful souls out there, until next time we meet again and talk about another beautiful truth in our self care journey, be kind to yourselves. With so much love and gratitude, I want to thank you for listening to this week's episode. My hope today is that the message continues to guide you along your path to healing. To learn more about me and my purposeful work, visit my website at abouthealingmedium.com. You can also follow About Healing Medium on Facebook and Instagram, where you can find the episode's healing guidance, quotes, tips, insights, and chances to win free stuff. To ask a question or to share comments, email me at abouthealingpodcast@gmail.com, or feel free to reach me on Facebook and Instagram at About Healing Medium. Until next time, be kind to yourself.